Hello, I'm Adam Kader. I'm the Public Policy Director for Arise Chicago, and also want to begin by thanking Matt and the rest of the Aspen team for inviting me to participate and to talk about some of the work that Arise Chicago does. Our mission is to organize the collective power of working class immigrants in partnership with faith communities to uplift all workers. And immigrant workers, primarily women, primarily low wage, primarily immigrant, are the heart of our organization. And workers that are facing difficulties on the job, in some cases extreme forms of oppression and exploitation, join our organization as members. And one of the reasons I love Arise Chicago is because we're a true center of community where people, as members of our organization, really do learn leadership and are get equipped with tools to make their lives better in the workplace and beyond. Our members are seeking power on the job to raise wages and to gain benefits, to eliminate health and safety hazards, to create respectful work environments that are free from discrimination, and to have manageable schedules that permit them to have meaningful lives outside of their work lives. And the question for, why is this work important now? The first thing I think of is a quote, an old saying that I like in the labor movement, that there's no such thing as undignified work. There are only undignified working conditions. And so one of the first big campaigns that I worked on at Arise Chicago was a candy factory in which workers were seldom allowed to leave their assembly line to use the bathroom. Bathroom breaks were so few and far between that some workers resorted to wearing diapers on the job. I want everyone to pause for just a moment and think about that. Wearing diapers on the job because your employer did not allow sufficient bathroom breaks. Work is what sustains ourselves and our families, and so I don't think there's anything undignified about working to sustain our lives. But too often, far too often, as Evan was saying, working conditions are undignified, even inhumane. And when I think about job equality, also, when we think historically, a long time ago, steel mills were among the least desirable, most dangerous jobs that you can think of, right? Child labor, horribly dirty and disease-ridden work sites. But because workers organized unions, they were able to transform steel jobs into desirable middle-class, sustaining jobs, including for workers without education or other traditional, measurements of workforce development. But if we fast forward a century later, we continue to mourn the loss of jobs like those manufacturing jobs. What once were terrible jobs when they arrived, are now, ones that we mourn their disappearance. So for me, taking the long view, there's no reason to settle for thinking that today's terrible jobs should always remain so. We know that through worker organizing, we will transform today's terrible jobs into tomorrow's desirable ones. And I think that the work is so important right now because the economic well-being of workers in this country continues to decline, as my co-panelists have already mentioned. And that furthermore, this is really work is the determining factor for so much other facets of our lives. What happens in the workplace has such a profound impact on our well-being at home, in our communities, among our families. And so I think that for those reasons, we really need to show our concern and come up with solutions now. And a lot of us are concerned about creeping authoritarianism in our society. And I think that we should reckon with the fact that some of these conditions that we talk about, this really poor quality in our work sites, comes down to a form of authoritarianism in our workplaces. So, coming, to really address job quality head on, we think that job quality at Arise Chicago is fundamentally democracy in the workplace. That means that, voice and dignity and power for workers at work. That job quality is workers actively deciding the terms and conditions of their workplaces. And while we can talk about and should talk about universal standards and categories for looking at job quality, like Renise said, job quality will mean different things to different people in different work sites. And so that's why I think the concept of workplace democracy really speaks to the heart of addressing job quality, because if we have a voice on the job and the power to make decisions on the job, I think that's an assurance of how we can reach higher job quality. And I think that it's hard, as I said, because of this impact of the workplace and the rest of society. It's hard to talk about, civic democracy and workplace democracy as two separate things. And that's why I kind of urge us when we enter these conversations to really embrace the idea of democracy both in and outside of workplaces, because it's really hard to have one without the other.